my train arrived in Brackenford under a sky the color of a pewter pan, the clouds already puckering with withheld rain. If I had any sense, I would have stayed on the rails and let the conductor carry me straight through to the coast. But my uncle's letter felt like a fishhook in my pocket. "Come at once," he had written. The letter slanted as though a trembling hand had pushed too hard on the nib. "Something has gone wrong with the menagerie. The thunder calls them." I had seen the menagerie 11 years earlier, when I was 15 and he was just a local curiosity. Felix Winrow, the widower taxidermist who mounted trout so lifelike their tails seemed to ripple in candlelight, who fixed glass eyes in owls that looked ready to blink. Even then, rumors flew that Uncle Felix performed restorations too perfect for mere cotton, wire, and varnish. Mrs. Ellaby, the grocer's wife, swore the stuffed fox in his display window had shifted positions between dusk and dawn. Old Sergeant Moore believed the crow on his mantelpiece actually preened its feathers whenever a storm rolled in. Even so, I never saw the back workshop. Uncle Felix kept it locked, and my parents, both firmly practical school teachers, insisted that their eccentric relative was harmless, if, perhaps, a little pagan in his affections. They said no danger could come from sawdust and stitches. I trusted them. Childhood requires faith. Now, stepping off the train with a carpet bag full of stale city clothes, I noticed the station master nailing boards across the windows. "Expecting a gale?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Storm tonight," he muttered. "Best be indoors by dusk." I found a hackney driver to carry me up the hill to Mill House, my uncle's crooked Victorian dwelling. Throughout the ride I heard hammering, shops bracing shutters, farm hands locking barns. Brackenford had always feared lightning. The moor above town bore a ragged stand of cedars, split by one catastrophic strike years ago, a cautionary silhouette against the sky. But this felt different, more urgent, more personal. The first thing I noticed upon entering Mill House was the clockwork heartbeat. A steady metallic tick-thrum echoed behind the walls, so faint I thought it was my pulse, until I paused in the foyer and realized the sound continued independent of my chest. It reminded me of pocket watches clicking out of sync, hundreds of them, each second slightly overlapped. Uncle Felix shuffled from the corridor, thinner than I remembered, his once walrus mustache pared down to wisps. "Edward," he breathed, gripping my arms as though assuring himself of my solidity. "You came. Good. Your letter worried me. What's happened?" A glance slid toward the stairs leading to the workshop door, newly padlocked. "I was careless," he said. "And now they're restless. Storm's brewing. You can feel it, can't you? They always wake for storms." I thought he meant rodents in the walls, perhaps the house martins under the eaves. "You're ill," I said instead. "Let me bring you to town. Dr. Filcher will—" "Doctors can't replace what's missing," he whispered. During an awkward supper called ham, pickles, bread gone dry, Felix explained in fragments. Years earlier, grief from my aunt's death had driven him to study vital recurrence, a notion he'd gleaned from tattered journals left by a German natural philosopher. Taxidermy, he insisted, was half an art, because the other half belonged to alchemy, the grafting of anima back into flesh. Most practitioners resign themselves to illusions, clever postures, clever postures, clever postures, clever postures, clever postures, clever postures. But a few dared farther. In Prague he'd met a metalsmith who crafted microscopic gears finer than eyelash curls. In Trieste, a chemist who distilled voltaic oil from cuttlefish ink. Felix combined their secrets with his own anatomical skill. He replaced the excised hearts in his specimens with clockwork equivalents, miniature orreries of brass cogs, hair-thin springs, and a central mainspring powered by static charge. "The heart lacks muscle," he admitted. "But life," he tapped his balding head, "life is persuasion. Convince the tissue it still obeys a rhythm, and the rest follows." I might have laughed had I not heard that distant tick-thrum repeating like a hive. "You're saying you brought animals back from the dead?" "Not back," he retorted. "Forward. Renewal, not resurrection. Their bodies are preserved, yes, but animated. They move, hunt, remember certain habits. He poured brandy, hand shaking. I thought storms would keep them dormant. Barometric pressure, you understand. But it's opposite. Lightning primes them. Electrostatic discharge winds the mainsprings. I don't credit a word, I said, though his confession dovetailed with every rumor. Dead foxes caught mid-prowl. Decapitated trout flapping silver tails. Even if it were true, why summon me? What danger could animals of straw and brass pose? He answered by opening the dining room doors. Beyond lay the sunroom, glass panes rattling under gathering wind. Across its tiled floor paced a tawny lynx, shoulders gliding like oiled machinery. Its yellowed pelt fit over gear-driven limbs. Beneath the ribs, a lattice cage of brass exposed a thumping orb the size of a lemon, each tick accompanied by a faint blue spark. When the lynx turned its head, I saw that the glass eyes were empty domes. From within, clock teeth rotated, adjusting the pupil's width. It watched us with the calm of a veteran predator. My chair scraped. I nearly toppled. God in heaven. The lynx did not spring. Its mandate, Uncle explained, forbade aggression unless threatened. But other creations lacked such inhibitions. The owl I had once admired indeed preened. Last month, it had shredded every curtain in the attic to obtain fresh cloth for fraying wing joints. The crow pillaged jewelry boxes at night, snipping silver chains to reinforce its tibias. Storms amplified their hunger for replacement parts. The stronger the lightning, the faster their innards whirred, and the quicker bearings ground down. They scavenged anything conductive, nails, hinges, belt buckles, and lately they had ventured beyond the manor, stalking barns for horseshoes, hen houses for wire places where nervous humans might intercede. I called you, Felix said, because I no longer trust my own judgment. I need a witness. If I err tonight, someone must end it. I should have fled then. Instead, I agreed. We barred windows, latched doors, stoked lamps with whale oil. Felix claimed the smell soothed certain beasts, and waited outside. Thunder stumbled across the moor like a drunken giant. The house answered with its mechanical heartbeat, some tempo of wound springs gaining fervor. Closer than the storm came a double thud against the cellar door, then a shriek of hinges warping. The lynx trotted past us toward the foyer, tail flicking with analytic precision. It sniffed, lips drawing to reveal iron dentures filed into carnivore points. A streak cut through the skylight. Lightning forked. Immediately an ascending whine shot through the walls, as though every unseen gear had spun simultaneously. The thud returned, heavier. Wood splintered. Uncle Felix sprinted for his toolkit. Pliers, screwdrivers, a squat lamp throwing copper light. If it's the bore, aim behind the jaw where the release pin... I held a fireplace poker but prayed I'd not use it. We inched toward the cellar. The door burst. Out-barreled a stag, antlers sheared of velvet, bone polished and interleaved with brass struts. Its torso showed taxidermy seams, yet powerful pistons thrust its legs. Spots of verdigris marked joints. Strapped to its haunches with leather belts sat a hare, stitched in place like a grotesque second rider. Where its heart belonged spun a gyroscopic wheel, emitting sparks. The stag sniffed the air and bellowed, a clattering of metal reeds. "We can't let them reach town," Felix hissed, voice ragged with paternal regret. "The church houses the largest bell. They'll tear it down for bronze." Lightning cracked again. The stag lunged forward, hooves skidding. The lynx intercepted, muscles and gears colliding with a clang like swords. I watched, horrified as preserved predators met in combat. The hare aboard the stag's rump sprang free, scuttling on hind legs toward a coat rack. A pair of pewter umbrella handles vanished into its abdomen, replaced by fresh gleam where rusty spokes had been. The duel crashed through the parlor. Felix charged after, shouting commands in a language that was part Latin, part engineer's shorthand. For a second the lynx tilted its ears, considering. The stag took advantage, throwing its head to pin the cat against the wall. Plaster burst, springs scattered like slinky toys. The lynx slumped, cogs spilling from its ribcage. Uncle Felix roared a noise of grief, not anger, and drove his screwdriver beneath the stag's left antler. I feared he'd be gored, but with a final ratchet grind, the beast froze, gears seizing. He pressed a lever. The mainspring unwound in a dying trill. The stag collapsed, legs folding as if kneeling to unseen royalty. When the house fell quiet, save for distant rain, Felix slumped beside his creations. He stroked the lynx's ruined pelt, shoulders convulsing. "I made them too well," he said. "Gave them instincts but not wisdom. What father gives life without teaching mercy?" I knelt. "It isn't too late. Destroy the rest before they rise. End their suffering." A growl answered not from the carcasses, but from the floorboards overhead. The owl. Floorboards creaked under talons. Thunder boomed. We heard rattling upstairs as constructs woke. Fox, badger, raven, all the work of a decade. The crow shrieked, a metallic caw like a hand sliding over piano wire. "Huh, they'll break through?" I warned. Felix's eyes cleared with sudden calculation. "Then we force them to sleep. Electrostatic overcharge." He motioned to the conservatory where an antique lightning rod protruded. "If we ground the current through the central mainspring network, feedback will rupture every heart." "And kill them?" He hesitated. "Release them." Together we dragged the stag's body into the conservatory, pried open the brass lattice in its chest. Braided copper conduit snaked from it, disappearing beneath floorboards, to a manifold feeding all specimens, a circulatory system of wires I hadn't noticed. The entire house was plumbed to radiate their phantom pulses. Wind screamed. Shutters clapped. The owl dived through a cracked transom, wingspan wide as a serving tray. Its beak gleamed steel. Felix thrust the copper conduit into my hands and fended the owl with a broom. I scrambled to attach the cable's clamp to the iron base of the lightning rod protruding through the glass ceiling. The owl sheared the broom to splinters, turning its faceted glass stare on me. Before it could launch, Felix seized its legs. Tiny saws popped from beneath its talons, slicing his forearms. He cried out but held fast. "Finish it, Edward!" Outside, violet light rippled across the clouds, swelling toward a fulgurite climax. I prayed the rod still functioned. Uncle's roof looked patched with rust in places, but copper is forgiving. I locked the clamp, then raced down the conduit toward the manifold. Felix still wrestled the owl, now screeching in binary tones. Blood streaked his sleeves. The rain finally breached a cracked pane, spattering the tiled floor with cold needles. Upstairs, the crow sounded nearer, scuttling along banisters. A fox barked, a metallic clack of jaws. Lightning struck. For one molten instant I glimpsed a bolt hammered into the rod, a spear of liquid light. The conduit flared white. Sparks erupted along the manifold. Every lamp shattered. The house itself exhaled heat. I felt my hair shift, as though poltergeists yanked it. The owl convulsed in Felix's arms, glow pulsing through its hollow body until seams burst. Molten solder dripped, sizzling on tiles. With a final shriek, the construct imploded, wings folding inward like burning paper. Above, thuds, a chain reaction. Each clockwork heart overstressed, cracked, and fused. The crow's caw cut to static. The fox's bark dwindled to a hiccup of scraping metal. Silence followed, broken only by natural thunder receding like applause. When my dazzled sight returned, I found Felix slumped amid brass fragments, breathing shallowly. The cuts on his arms bled freely. We bound them with handkerchiefs. The contracts lay scattered. The lynx, stag, owl, hare, now nothing but taxidermy corpses stitched around blistered metal. I thought it done until I heard the faintest tick. Not in the remains, in my uncle's chest. Felix clutched his heart. "Edward, pull box." I fetched it. He pulled away his waistcoat buttons to reveal a scar down his sternum, puckered like a zipper. I stared. No. I installed a prototype after Mildred died, he confessed, words weak. Stroke left my heart half dead. Couldn't bear to leave my work orphaned. He smiled with bitter irony. Human tissue, though, harder to persuade. The feedback that killed his animals had reached him through that wired network. The mainspring within him stuttered, overstrained. His breath hiccuped to match the irregular ticks. I knelt, tears hot. "Tell me what to do." "The key," he rasped, patting his vest pocket. I withdrew a tiny silver winder shaped like a treble clef. Turned counterclockwise. 3 clicks. Releases tension. My hands shook. I feared I'd snap the stem. But I inserted it through the scar's rubber gasket and turned once, twice, thrice. The ticking slowed. Felix sighed, eyelids fluttering. "Thank you." He closed his eye. I touched his wrist. Still a pulse. Organic, but frail. Morning found Brackenford bright and sodden, steam rising from cobbles. I walked to town seeking the doctor. On the way I passed villagers inspecting cracked walls, uprooted shingles. They spoke of a thunderclap like cannon fire above Millhouse. Some swore they saw animals running across the moor, but assumed silhouettes of imagination. No brass, no corpses remained outside the manor overnight. I had collected shards, buried them in the garden under stones, let them rust unseen. Felix survived another day. On the second, he asked me to burn his notebooks. "Knowledge without conscience breeds monsters," he said. I argued that science, properly guided, enlightens. He countered, "It was never science, Edward. It was loneliness." That evening I built a bonfire. Paper curled, sketches blackened, formulas flew upward as sparks. I half expected resurrected beasts to leap from the smoke, but only moths circled. Somewhere inside the house, my uncle's heart clicked, patient and uncertain. Weeks passed. Repairs kept me in Brackenford. The manor needed new wiring, and Felix needed supervision. Each storm we unplugged everything, grounded every metal knob, yet still, I watched his eyes during lightning, wary of that internal mainspring winding itself. Mountains of solitude can persuade a man to unspeakable inventions. What, then, could guilt accomplish? One afternoon, while sorting salvaged gears for the scrap dealer, I noticed an object missing. The lynx's heart, the lemon-sized orb. We never found it among the ruins. I convinced myself it had melted, but some nights I dream of a soft tick beneath garden soil, seeds sprouting around a dormant core, awaiting thunder to awaken again. When the first autumn gale arrived, Brackenford sealed windows as always. I sat by my uncle's bed and held his hand, counting beats. Outside, electricity coiled in the air like a question. Inside, the old house listened, its corridors empty at last. Yet faint through timber, deep under earth, I almost discerned an echo. Tick, thrum, tick, thrum. A heritage of cogs refusing final silence.